There's a word in Japanese that doesn't have an exact translation. It describes that moment when you're so exhausted, so split between 1,000 roles, mother, professional, caregiver, woman, that you no longer know which of these versions of you is the real one. In Kyoto, a 91-year-old Buddhist nun named Jakucho Setouchi spent her entire life studying that exact pain. Before she passed away, she left behind a teaching that sums up everything we're about to explore today. You don't have to carry your whole life at once. You only have to get through this moment, and then the next one. Japan is the only country in the world that combines the highest life expectancy on the planet with one of the most intense work cultures that exist. And yet, there's a quiet secret hidden there, not in Western self-help books, but in 1,000-year-old household rituals that teach us how to get through hard days without breaking.
If you've made it this far feeling like your mind never switches off, like your home is never quite ready enough, like your body is never quite good enough, and like your time never really belongs to you, stay with me, because the next few minutes were made for you. Before we dive into these 8 rituals, if you're the kind of woman who feels like she needs more lightness in her everyday life, hit subscribe right now. Every week, I bring you a new piece of this Japanese wisdom, translated into real life, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. And listen, before I keep going, I need to tell you something. Everything you're about to hear, I've gathered in a much more complete and in-depth way inside a resource I created especially for you, A Woman Japanese Complete. In it, I bring together not just these 8 rituals, but all the others that are part of this Japanese philosophy of life, organized in a way you can actually apply to your routine, week after week. I've pinned the access to it in the first comment on this video, but it's only going to be available for a limited time. So if this topic is stirring something in you, go grab yours before it's taken down. Now, let's get into the 8 rituals. In Japan, there isn't a word that exactly matches work-life balance the way we use it in the West. Not because Japanese people don't struggle with this. They even have a word for death from overwork, karoshi. But because Japanese culture doesn't split life into compartments that need to be balanced, it sees life as a continuous river, and what's cultivated isn't balance, but ritual, a small, repeated act done with full attention that gives the modern woman back something she lost, the feeling of being present in her own life. Let's walk through 8 of these rituals now, and I promise you'll recognize yourself in at least 3 of them before we're even halfway through. Have you ever had one of those days where everything goes wrong and you still hold it together, smile at everyone else, and keep going because you don't feel like you have a choice? There's an old Japanese word, born in Zen Buddhism, that names exactly that quiet strength: Gaman, the ability to endure what feels unbearable with dignity, without falling apart on the inside. After the 2011 earthquake and tsunami, journalists from around the world were struck by the sight of orderly lines, silence, and cooperation among people who had just lost everything. That wasn't the absence of pain. That was Gaman, the belief, passed down from generation to generation, that strength doesn't lie in not feeling, but in getting through the feeling without letting it destroy what's left. And that's what changes everything once you truly understand Gaman. It doesn't ask you to pretend you're okay. It reminds you that there's a difference between suffering in destructive silence and getting through something with dignity. And that often, the simple act of continuing, one step at a time, without demanding of yourself that you look fine, is already in itself an enormous act of courage that no one else sees, but that still counts. You open Instagram. You see another woman's organized life, her body, her home, her career, and within seconds, something inside you is already comparing, already feeling behind, not enough, out of sync with the right timing. In Japan, there's an old expression drawn from observing nature:
Oubaitori. It comes from the combination of 4 blossoms: the cherry, the plum, the peach, and the apricot, which bloom at different times of year, each in its own season, none competing with the others to bloom first or bloom the same way. No one looks at a cherry tree in January and says it's running late just because the plum tree already bloomed. Each tree simply blooms when it's its time to bloom. And that's exactly what Oubaitori teaches about a woman's life. Your career doesn't have to happen on your friend's timeline. Your motherhood doesn't have to follow anyone else's calendar. Your healing doesn't have to take the same amount of time as someone else's healing. There's a deep freedom in accepting that you're blooming exactly on your own timeline, and that this was never a delay. There's a quiet weight in believing you should already know how to do everything. Be a good mother without ever making a mistake. Be a professional without ever hesitating. Be a grown woman without ever having doubts. And when something new shows up in your life, instead of curiosity, what comes up first is the fear of not being able to handle it. Zen master Shunryu Suzuki once said that in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. He was talking about Shoshin, the beginner's mind, the state of openness, curiosity, and freedom from judgment with which we approach something for the very first time. Shoshin isn't about not knowing. It's about allowing yourself not to know everything all the time and still moving forward with curiosity instead of shame. It's the woman who starts a new chapter of her life, a new job, a new city, a new version of herself after a loss, without the inner demand to already have it all figured out. Returning to the beginner's mind is giving yourself back the right to learn again, to get things wrong again, to grow again, without treating any of that as a sign of failure. How many times have you tried to change everything at once, in a rush, and the change simply didn't stick? A new routine, a hard conversation that needed to happen, a big life decision, and without any preparation, it all fell apart within the first few weeks. Inside Japanese companies, before any major decision is officially made, there's a process called Nemawashi, which literally means going around the roots, an expression borrowed from gardening, from the careful practice of preparing a tree's roots before transplanting it, so it doesn't die in the process. In human relationships, Nemawashi means quietly laying the groundwork, having informal conversations, aligning expectations, before any big change is ever announced. And that matters enormously in a woman's personal life. Before announcing a big change, quitting a job, ending a relationship, moving to a new city, there's an internal preparation time that deserves to be respected. Nemawashi is a reminder that decisions born out of impulse rarely survive, while decisions grown from well-tended roots hold. Giving yourself that time to prepare isn't indecision, it's wisdom. Some days it feels like life has lost its poetry. Everything is turned into a task, a routine, an obligation. Wake up, solve it, deliver it, repeat. And somewhere in the middle of that, the sensitivity a woman once had for noticing beauty in small things seems to have gone quiet. In medieval Japanese aesthetics, there's an almost indescribable concept called Yugen, the perception of a deep, mysterious beauty that can't be fully explained in words. It's the feeling of watching mist settle over a mountain at dawn, or the silence right after the sound of a temple bell fades into the air. Yugen isn't found in the object itself. It lives in the sensitivity of the one who's paying attention. Reclaiming Yugen in everyday life means reclaiming the ability to feel moved by the steam rising from a cup of tea, by the way light falls differently through the window at 5 in the afternoon, by the sound of rain on the roof while you sit quietly inside your home. None of that changes your schedule, but it completely changes the emotional texture of your day. because it gives back to a woman the very thing the rush of life tries to steal first, the capacity to be moved by wonder. There's an enormous difference between pushing yourself because you're trying to prove something to someone and pushing yourself because you chose, on your own 2 feet, to see something through that actually matters to you. Ganbaru is one of the most commonly used words in everyday Japanese. It means literally to persist with everything you've got, to give your very best until the end. It's the word a father says to his child before an exam, that a coach says to a team before a game, that a friend says to another before surgery. But the deepest meaning of Ganbaru isn't found in winning. It's found in the dignity of continuing to try, even with no guarantee of success at all. Many women carry a distorted version of Ganbaru, aimed at pleasing others, at proving their worth, at never disappointing anyone. True Ganbaru, the Japanese kind, is turned inward. It's the strength to keep trying for yourself, for your own reasons, even when no one is applauding, even when no one even notices the effort happening quietly behind the scenes. This is the ritual that most women report has transformed their relationship with their own bodies, not because it's about dieting, but because it's about limits. In Okinawa, before every meal, there's a saying the elders repeat quietly: Hara Hachi Bu. Eat until your stomach is 80% full, and stop, even if there's still food left on the plate. This ancient practice, now studied by scientists around the world as one of the secrets behind Okinawans' extraordinary longevity, isn't about restriction. It's about listening. Hara Hachi Bu teaches something that goes far beyond the plate of food: the difference between pushing on until total exhaustion and stopping at the exact point where the body has already received enough. It's the woman who learns to leave a meeting before she's completely drained, who learns to say, "That's enough for today," before hitting her limit, who learns to step away from a conversation that's already given what it had to give, without needing to hit rock bottom to recognize that it was already enough. Stopping at 80% isn't weakness. It's the wisest way to make sure there's still energy left for tomorrow. And we've arrived at the last ritual, perhaps the most beautiful of them all. It was born inside the Japanese tea ceremony, more than 400 years ago, created by the master Sen no Rikyu, the same man who let those leaves fall onto the perfectly raked garden we mentioned earlier. Ichigo Ichie literally means one time, one meeting. The idea that every moment, every encounter with another person, every instant lived happens only once in life and will never repeat itself in exactly that way again. Even if you have tea with the same person tomorrow, that specific tea on that specific day with those specific words will never exist again. Rikyu taught his students to treat every ceremony as if it were the only one, the last one, of their lives. Not out of fear of death, but out of reverence for life. And that's exactly what Ichigo Ichie gives back to the modern woman, so used to living on autopilot, already thinking about the next task while still in the middle of the current one. An invitation to really look at her child playing, at breakfast with her mother, at laughing with a friend, knowing that that specific moment is unrepeatable, and that precisely because of that, it deserves to be lived with open eyes, instead of rushed through while her mind is somewhere else entirely. If you notice, none of these 8 rituals ask you to become someone else. Gaman reminds you that getting through something with dignity is already strength enough. Oubaitori gives you back the right to bloom on your own timeline. Shoshin gives you permission not to know everything. Nemawashi teaches you to prepare the ground before you change. Yugen gives you back the capacity to be delighted by the small things. Ganbaru reminds you who you're really pushing yourself for. Hara Hachi Bu teaches you to stop before you hit your limit. And Ichigo Ichie invites you to look at this exact moment as if it were because it truly is one of a kind. Yakucho Satoshi, the nun we opened this video with, used to say that happiness is never found in the big transformation we plan for the future. It's found in the small rituals we move through, with presence, today. If any of these words touched something in you, remember, the full resource, A Woman Japanese Complete, with all of these rituals explored in much greater depth, is pinned in the first comment, but only for a limited time, so don't put it off. And if this video reached you at just the right moment, tell me down below which of these 8 rituals you're going to carry into your day today. Until next time, which, just like Riku's tea, will also be one of a kind.